forward to this for the whole time.
Hello, it's John Reed.
Hey, Mr. Reed, this is Judge Miller. We're calling from the courtroom here at the jail. Are you available to stand in for Mr. Havens on this case?
Yes, I certainly appreciate you letting me call in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, Mr. Davis, good afternoon. We're here for your first appearance hearing. We have Mr. Longhorn here from the Public Defender's Office to your right, and we have an attorney from the State Attorney's Office, Mr. Reed, appearing by telephone. As best you're able to, sir, if you would raise your right hand to be sworn by the clerk.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Davis, did you hear the recording that was playing in the holding cell before you were brought out here?
No, sir, I didn't hear any.
Okay, well, let me just cover a few basic things with you before we do your first appearance. You're here this afternoon for a first appearance hearing. Primarily, there are two things that we're going to do at your hearing this afternoon. Number one is for me to determine whether or not there's probable cause for your arrest. A lot of that is based upon the warrant in this case, and then I have reviewed the charging affidavit as well. And then secondly, to determine whether or not what bond would be appropriate. Sometimes I may increase it from what the police indicate, sometimes I may decrease it. A lot of that is based upon the facts of the case, the nature of the charges, your prior history, if any, victims' wishes, things of that nature. Two important things I want to remind you of here today. Number one is that you have the right to remain silent. This is a court proceeding. Everything is being recorded digitally, and there's a number of cameras here as well for this case, so everything's being recorded. It's also your hearing though. You have a right to speak if you'd like to. But keep in mind that if you say anything here today that is incriminating, it is possible that the state could later pull the recording, use it against you at trial. So you have to decide for yourself whether it's worth the risk of addressing the court, possibly incriminating yourself or not. Second thing is you have a right to counsel. For that purpose, we have Mr. Longhorn here today. He's with the Public Defender's Office. So in this case, you are charged with a crime, so you do have the right to counsel. All right, at this point, we'll go ahead and proceed forward. Mr. Reed, do you know how the state is going to charge this eventually? Right now, the warrant says lewd or lascivious molestation, I believe, which would be a second-degree felony, but the literal on the 707 does say sexual battery and cites to the sexual battery statute, which would be a first-degree felony punishable by life. So I know I'm kind of catching you off guard and you're just filling in on short notice.
Well, I'm happy to answer that. At this point, I mean, I'll tell you, I guess without getting too much detail, we haven't interviewed the kid. The state attorney's office has not interviewed the child yet.
Okay.
And I was the one who the police talked to about doing the warrant. And the difference between the second degree and the first degree is consent. So without eyeballing the child, speaking with him, there was some more information I wanted before I felt comfortable charging it as a first degree felony.
Okay.
Based on the nature of the way he interacted with the child, where he was in a substitute teacher capacity, I think there's an additional charge of, I don't have the statute number off the top of my head, but having sexual relations with a student when you're in that capacity. So I think you'd have at least 2 second-degree felonies, if not a first-degree felony. But without talking to the child, I didn't want to do the warrant that way. And because Mr. Davis has a lot of contact with children, we didn't want to wait on a warrant and have an additional victim, or wait to interview the child. So that's why we went forward and did the warrant, or what we did.
Okay, so is as charged in the warrant, it is a second-degree felony. You'd agree he would normally be entitled to bond on that, or is the state?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is the state objecting to a bond?
No, I think by statute, by law, he's entitled to a bond. I'd ask for one much higher than $10,000. I think based on the nature of these and the facts of this case, I would be asking for a $250,000 bond. You've read the 707. It's a strong case. There's a control call where he's made admissions to performing oral sex on a child. He was in a capacity of supervision of the child. He's a substitute teacher. He groomed the child through his substitute teaching. He has a lot of connections with children through his church, through his volunteering, through his work. I think that makes him an additional danger to the community. So that's why I asked for a much higher bond than the defense had asked for. I would agree with the defense that if he is released on bond, he should have pretrial services. I think he should have GPS monitoring like the defense said. He should surrender his passport. He should be able to use the internet or social media, because as you've seen in the charging affidavit, he used social media and the internet to seduce this child. He should obviously have no contact with children under 18, no contact with the victim or the victim's grandmother.
So as I have found, there is probable cause to believe he committed the crime of lewd and lascivious battery as charged in the warrant as a second-degree felony. I think that would control. At this point, I do think you're entitled to a bond. I am going to set bond plus pretrial services. A lot of this is I'm basing it on the testimony you've offered here today, your significant ties to the community, the assets you've testified about, your lack of any criminal history, but I'm also have to balance that with the allegations against you, the seriousness of the crimes charged, the weight of the evidence against you, and possible penalties, and thus, the incentive to possibly flee the jurisdiction, even though I do recognize you have substantial ties to the community. I am going to set a bond. It may not be as low as you want or what you hope for, but I do think it's fair given the balance of all the facts that have been presented to me. I'm going to set bond at $100,000. Plus, if you're able to post that bond, you'll be subject to pretrial supervision monitoring with the following special conditions. Starting today, you're to have no contact with the minor victim initials MWJ. You know who I'm talking about there? The one listed in the 707?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes.
So you're to have no contact with him, no contact directly, indirectly, through third parties, through Facebook, through text messages, at all. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Any questions about that whatsoever?
No, sir.
So ordered to have no contact with schools where minors might be present. That would be high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. So here's the rest of it.
You know, what the allegation is that he had lewd and lascivious conduct or a battery committed on a child 16 years or younger. We feel, based on Davis's work with the Catholic Church in Port Orange, Epiphany of Our Lord, and with the school board, that there may be other victims out there. And it is a textbook example, once again, of a person in power who parents entrust their child to, and he uses that trust to sexually abuse this 15-year-old student. And it's just, the more you see it and the more you read about it, the more disgusting and despicable it is. And again, it fits the profile. Here's a man who is a youth leader at his Catholic school, the Catholic Church. He is a adjunct or a teacher, a substitute teacher, who gains the trust and confidence through tutoring with algebra, and then takes advantage of this young man. I mean, it is despicable. It is cowardly. You stole this child's innocence away, and obviously there are certain type of child that these scumbags look for. You know, they're looking for somebody who's fatherless. What are the most underreported crimes? The most underreported crimes are sex crimes. You know, rape is grossly underreported. You know, child abuse, sexual child abuse at the hands of a family member or a trusted person is grossly underreported. Even in this case, the mother did not want to go forward with criminal charges. But we, meaning the state, take the place of the parent to make sure that he's prosecuted, because we have all the evidence that we need. And he's a minor, and there are certain things that we can do, and we have all this evidence. And we're going to go forward with what we have.
What did Davis say to your deputy when they arrested him about?
He was actually on the phone with his attorney when we went to arrest him. He knew it was coming, because the school board had been alerted to the investigation, and he was no longer substitute teaching. So he ain't stupid. He knew why he wasn't going into schools to teach. He knew we were coming. It was a matter of when we were going to get there. I would tell you that Davis's own confession in a controlled call is what puts it over the top, is when the conversation is recorded between him and the young man. And that is what puts it over the top for us.